Hello. You. I recently finished watching the last season of You on Netflix. Yes, I know I'm very late to the party, but in my defense, I have been binge watching all 7 seasons of The Mentalist, so... I have to say, while You isn't a perfect show by any means, the final season truly outdid itself for one particular reason. And that reason is that we went from loving Joe Goldberg to being absolutely horrified by him. You is the story of Joe Goldberg, a dangerously obsessive young man who goes to unthinkable lengths in order to win the heart of You, aka the woman he falls in love with.
Joe is on the pursuit, and he wants to be the only one for her, a protector who's always there for her, literally.
Now, from literally the very beginning of the show, from season 1, episode 1, we have known that Joe Goldberg isn't a good person. I mean, he's actually a terrible person who is violent, manipulative, and extremely dangerous. Sure, he's got some past trauma that definitely contributes to the way he's turned out, but at his core, I think Joe likes the monster inside of him, or at the very least, he accepts it. And yet, for 4.5 seasons of television, we've been rooting for him. We've been on his side. We've wanted him to succeed in killing everyone in his girlfriends' lives and eventually his girlfriends themselves. And it was only in the final season that the writers decided to challenge us on that decision because what is wrong with us? Why are we cheering on a serial killer? It makes no sense. The writers of season 5 turned the spotlight away from Joe and onto us. And I felt myself literally shriveling up beneath that exposing beam. The direction and production design also added to this sudden switch in the storytelling, moving from a hazy, romantic aesthetic to a stark, nightmarish view of the monster Joe really is. Some of you may not know this, but You is actually a book published by Carolyn Kepnes in 2014. And oh boy, in my opinion, the book is a lot darker than the show. That switch at the end of season 5 doesn't exist in the book because you see Joe for what he is from the very first page. I actually started reading You when I was on the train to London. Maybe that was my bad, but the train was packed. There was a guy sitting next to me and he looked at the first page. And if you've read the book, you know that there's no easing into Joe's mindset. He then proceeds to get out his phone and start playing hymns out loud, so whether or not those two things are correlated, I don't know, but he clearly thought I needed some sort of exorcism or divine intervention, and maybe he was right. After reading this book, maybe he was right. This book is actually very disturbing. Admittedly, I almost stopped reading it after the first few chapters because I didn't know how dark it was going to get and I wasn't sure I was ready for that. The second person point of view was definitely the cherry on top because you literally feel like you are the subject of Joe's obsession. It's eerie. But I am so glad that I pushed on because it ended up being one of the most unique reading experiences I have ever had. The show does a really great job of showing how charming Joe can be. In fact, we as the audience are manipulated by his charm just as much as the characters are. I have to credit Penn Badgley's performance here because I don't think anyone could have played Joe as well as he did. I mean, look at this guy. The duality of man. But the difference between the show and the book is that we only hear Joe's deranged thoughts via voiceover some of the time.
I will find you.
Whereas when you're reading it, you're in his head constantly, and you hear every little depraved thought and delusional dream in real time.
Everything I have done for you.
Like I said, it was almost so disturbing that I nearly quit the book, but I didn't. I kept reading. Why? Because Joe Goldberg is fascinating. Now, I don't know about you, but in my regular life, I don't read about murders and side with the culprit. As I said, Netflix did a great job of turning the tide on Joe in the last season of You, making us see him as the serial killer monster that he really is. But that didn't stop me from being intrigued by Joe, by his psyche and the way he justified what he did. All of this got me thinking, there is an abundance of content, both original stories and true crime, all about murder mysteries and serial killers. Just look at the works of Agatha Christie, Bella Mackie, Patricia Highsmith, more on them later. In a lot of cases, these stories are framed so that we are obviously against the killer, but in a few instances, like You or How to Train Your Dragon, How to Kill Your Family, we side with the antagonist instead. Hello, please excuse my voice. I've just had a cold, so now I sound like baby Justin Bieber. You know you love me, I know you care. Crime is one of the biggest and most successful genres within the visual media and publishing industries, and I have a few theories about why that is. The first is that we as humans are simply enthralled by our own species. It's actually quite funny when you think about it. I mean, we spend so much time researching each other, even though we're technically made of all the same parts, right? But just like the brain named itself, it also created billions of people with different personalities, quirks, and temperaments. To be perfectly honest, I was trying to come up with a definition of human beings by thinking of something that we all share, but in most cases, I really struggled to do so. I think the closest I've come to finding something that we all have in common is sentience, the ability to experience feelings, thoughts, and emotions. But while humans are sentient, we're also extremely different. Many people share similar ethics, values, or beliefs, but we're all just as unique as our fingerprints, and that makes way for certain individuals to exist. Individuals who may not value human life as much as the rest of us do. Joe is unlike anyone a lot of us have ever or will ever meet, and so we're desperate to learn more about his psyche. I think this is also why the show Mindhunter was so beloved and so good when it was out. It was actually a crime that it was cancelled, and I really hope the rumours about it being brought back in some way all these years later are true, because I need more of it. Mindhunter is the somewhat true story of the early days of criminal profiling in the 70s and 80s. If you haven't watched this show yet, I seriously cannot recommend it enough. Criminal profiling is a forensic technique that involves analysing evidence from a crime scene to infer the personality, behavioural, and demographic characteristics of an unknown offender. Mindhunter follows Holden Ford, played impeccably by Jonathan Groff, and Bill Tench, played by Holt McElhaney, as they interview various incarcerated criminals and create a database that could help the FBI and other authorities predict where, when, and by who crimes may be committed in the future.
We travel around the country and teach FBI techniques to cops.
Unlike the show You, Mindhunter features real criminals from our world. Ed Gein in this show is particularly terrifying and played phenomenally by Happy Anderson.
You know, there's a lot more like me.
Do you think so?
And once again, I was unable to tear myself away while watching this series. All of this to say, we as humans love consuming content about killers. Their lives, their cognitive functions, their basic programming is so other from ours that we have to see more, we have to learn more, we have to get as close as possible so that we can pick apart all the different ways that we are opposite to them. Nothing is as interesting as the unknown, and the mind of a killer is about as unknown as most people can get. The second reason I think crime is such a popular genre is because I think people find a lot of excitement reading about someone who is doing something that we could never or would never do. It's exactly the same as reading a book about intergalactic battles or dragon riders. Although, after reading Fourth Wing, I still have hope that I'll find my own dragon and complete the threshing and save the world and my Venom boyfriend. These things will, sadly, never happen to us, but that doesn't make consuming these stories any less of a thrill. And the third and final reason some of us consume crime content is research. Wait, no, that came out wrong. I don't mean that we're researching how to become serial killers. Okay, stop looking at me like that. I mean that out of sheer self-preservation, we consume content about people who hurt people so that we don't get hurt ourselves. Just like some people theorize that the brain creates dreams so that we can prepare ourselves for various scenarios, a lot of people, especially a lot of women, watch true crime and read murder mysteries so that we don't end up like the victims. I think we are all well aware that women are too often the victim of violent crime, so it makes sense that we would consume content that would give us advice, essentially, of what to look out for so that we don't end up in dangerous or life-threatening situations. I do wonder if that's why a lot of crime authors are women, and a lot of the best crime authors are women. You was written by Carolyn Kepnes, and another example of a female writer who has created one of the most infamous crime stories of all time is the incomparable Patricia Highsmith, the author behind The Talented Mr Ripley and other crime classics. The Talented Mr Ripley follows the story of Tom Ripley, who is sent by a wealthy businessman to meet with his son, Dickie Greenleaf, in Italy, and convince him to return home. However, when Tom arrives in Italy, he becomes infatuated by Dickie's life, and by Dickie himself, and he ends up committing multiple murders in order to steal Dickie's wealth and assume his identity. Published in 1955, The Talented Mr Ripley is a story that has stood the test of time and has delighted readers for decades, and yet it's still the story of a murderer at its core. Just like with you, we're rooting for Tom Ripley as he slowly inserts himself into and then takes over Dickie Greenleaf's life. Unlike Joe Goldberg, Tom Ripley's charm comes across a lot more on the page than his darker attributes. Enough that I found myself chuckling at his observations of the world while he's, planning a murder. Some of the charm in this book also comes from the time period it's written and set in. The juxtaposition between old-fashioned politeness and the brutality of the murders is extremely jarring and entertaining. The other appealing thing about Tom Ripley is his intelligence. I mean, he's a wizard with numbers and he's a forger, but even more impressively, he manages to stay on track with both alibis, both identities, while being both Tom and Dickie, and while also not premeditating the murders he commits. That's impressive. It's amazing to read how seamlessly he becomes Dickie, how his obsession with this man becomes so dangerous and then so freeing for Tom. Even characters like Marge and the Inspector, who I would argue are quite intelligent characters, are completely taken for a ride by Tom. There have been many adaptations of Ripley over the years, probably most notably the film starring Matt Damon, Jude Law and Gwyneth Paltrow in 1999, and more recently the series Ripley, starring Andrew Scott, Johnny Flynn and Dakota Fanning. Both lead actors portray Ripley slightly differently, but the essence of him is still there. That desire to be liked, the desire to be Dickie, and then the desire to be free again. The latest series was so loyal to the book that I binged it all in one day, and Scott's performance was just as subtly humorous as it was eerie. I had an absolute blast watching this show, not only for the story and performances, but also the design. The monochromatic colouring and gorgeous shots really did Highsmith's original story justice, capturing the beauty of a place where Tom commits such heinous acts against his friends and gets away with it. The Talented Mr Ripley is truly one of my favourite books, and I was so happy to see it so well transferred to the screen.
Another crime-centric story that is getting a TV adaptation is How to Kill Your Family by Bella Mackie. This book, guys, this book got me out of a reading slump. A serious reading slump. Also, can we just talk about how pretty the cover design is? I mean, pastel pink? Well, yes. Unlike the other two books I've talked about, How to Kill Your Family follows a female main character instead. Her name is Grace, and similar to Ripley and you, she is hilarious and charming and slightly deranged. Each of our three main characters share this sort of calculated coldness that really comes through, especially when they are committing crimes.
With both direction and magnitude. Oh yeah!
And their intelligence, humour, and the occasional mishaps that they then have to rectify while also murdering people makes for a high-stakes, amusing, and obviously disturbing read.
When Grace discovers her absentee millionaire father has rejected her dying mother's pleas for help, she vows revenge and sets about to kill every member of his family. Readers have a front row seat as Grace picks off the family one by one, and the result is as gruesome as it is entertaining in this wickedly dark romp about class, family, love, and murder. If you're a fan of Killing Eve or Fleabag, I think you will love this book. How to Kill Your Family is unique from Ripley and You by the way it's told. Grace has killed several people, and you read flashbacks of every murder she's committed, and yet at the start of the story, she's languishing in jail for a murder she didn't commit. Grace, Joe, and Tom are all driven by one core need. The need for revenge, the need to be accepted, the need to be someone else. It's an insight into the mind of a killer we wouldn't get from Agatha Christie's work, for example, as her Poirot series, including titles like Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, and so on, are told from the detective's point of view. I think that's why these three titles feel like throwing a bucket of cold water over yourself. I think the darker sides of us are curious to live inside the mind of an individual with morals so opposite to our own. Overall, I think the crime genre is kind of a mirror for us as a species. We love to observe things that are different to us for a plethora of reasons, and we are truly a strange and curious bunch at heart. Let me know if you have any crime recommendations, be that books, podcasts, TV shows. I'd love to explore more of the genre. And thank you as always for watching. Please do subscribe and I will see you in my next video. But until then...